You can also hand model roses. And this is a great technique if you want a realistic looking rose, but you don't have the whole set of cutters and you don't have a lot of modeling tools available to you. You're going to start off by making a cone-shaped rose base out of fondant. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be covered up with petals, but I like to have mine shaped in such a way that it can stand up on its own. That way I don't have to worry about putting it down. And what you're going to do is basically pinch off enough fondant to make a petal, and then using your hands and then using the palm of your hand and your fingers, mold that into a rose petal shape. You're going to want to use your fingers to thin out the top of the petal. And this first petal, we're going to wrap around the center base so that you can't see the middle sticking up, much like you would if you were making a gum paste rose or even a buttercream rose. That first petal, whether you're piping it or you're making it out of fondant, needs to wrap tightly around the base so that you don't see the top of the base poking up through. And then you'll just keep on pinching off a wee bit, making a petal. You can pinch the top to thin it, or you might have better luck putting it in your hand and using your finger to thin it like that. And then just start building your rose by adding the petals that you make for it. And you can use your finger to kind of furl the edges of the petal back if you want it to look a little bit more realistic. Make sure you have a glass or something that you can put over the fondant that you're not working with so that it doesn't dry out on you. Because you need to make these petals one at a time, and that takes a little bit. Okay, you can see what it looks like so far. I've got 3 petals on. This is not any kind of exact measurement. I'm literally just pinching a bit off, rolling it into a ball, and then kind of forming it into a petal shape in my hands. And you can see that this end down here is thicker than the top, and that's how that's going to look more like a realistic petal, because it's thin and I can furl it back like that. Or if I decide that I positioned it a little bit too high, I can reposition it. I have a very thin layer of white vegetable shortening on my hands. That's probably why they look a little bit shiny. That helps keep the fondant from sticking to my hand as I'm thinning the petal. And it also helps keep it nice and soft and pliable so it's easy to work with. Now what you're going to notice, or at least what I notice, is that my rose starts getting a little bit taller and there's a little bit more excess down on here. What I usually do is when I get to about this point and I feel like there's a lot here that's kind of getting in my way, I just pinch that off and I make a new base. Again, this is a free-form rose, so we're not going to panic if one petal looks a little bit bigger than the other. You can make it as big as you want, you can make it as full as you want. There's no law that says every petal needs to be exactly the same size. But you can see it's shaping up now. It's starting to look like a rose. But this is actually probably my favorite way to make a rose, just simply because there's no cutters involved, there's no modeling tools involved. You can just kind of, it's very hands-on and therapeutic. Now, because I'm only going to add a few more petals, these later ones, I'm going to make sure that they're a little bit more open than the ones before it. And invariably they'll end up looking a little bit bigger too. My petals get bigger as I go on. There we go. Now, I know nature likes to work with odd numbers, but sometimes when we're hand modeling our flowers, the petals just don't come out in odd numbers. So we're not going to panic about that. Sometimes it doesn't get quite ruffled enough on the very edge. You can just take your fingers and pinch it and make it however you want it to be. Okay, so I'm probably only going to put 2 more petals on this. And you don't have to do this with just fondant. This works really well with marzipan. Not just for making fruits and veggies. You can make roses with it too. There we go. I'm just going to do 1 more petal. This is going to be the last one. There we go. Whoops. Try not to drop your flowers. Okay. There we go. Okay, and there it is. There's my rose. And this little rose is going to go on this cupcake here.